If I'm not praying, then I'm not breathing. Because Salah is one of the most essential spiritual oxygens. The remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the oxygen of the heart. So if I'm not praying, that is the first thing I have to look at as the root cause of my suffering. There are other spiritual reasons why we suffer, and that's what I talk about in Reclaim Your Heart. And that is that when we take something other than Allah and we put it in a place in our hearts and in our lives where only Allah should be, it will cause unimaginable suffering. So if I take my money, if I take my own child, this is one of the biggest tests, especially for parents, mothers. Let me just tell you this, and then inshallah, I will open it up for questions, okay? Oftentimes as women, we are sort of conditioned to put people at the center of our existence, other people, okay? Have you guys ever wondered what's the root of the mother-in-law problem? Anyone ever wondered about that? Can I tell you what the root cause of the mother-in-law problem is? You ready? Okay, so there was a little girl who, when she was a child, she did not have her emotional needs met. Now, I want you to understand that human beings have physical needs. We have the need for oxygen and water and food. But we also have, parallel to that, we have something called emotional needs. One of them is unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, unconditional safety. When a person does not have their emotional needs met, it is a type of starvation, okay? So when this little girl was growing up, she did not have her emotional needs met. So she grew up, and now she's, an adult in society, and maybe she's looking in society to have those emotional needs met. Maybe she uses social media. Maybe she uses showing off. Maybe she uses status symbols to have this empty place inside sort of fulfilled. If I have a really fancy car, or I have certain status symbols, then I can have that place, that vacancy will be filled. But it doesn't really fill her because it can't. And then what does she do? She gets married. And now she's married to a man who often also does not, where she is in a marriage, where her emotional needs are not met. Why? Because probably she has an anxious attachment style and she's married to an avoidant. And what does an avoidant do? An avoidant is someone who suppresses their feelings. So now this woman, who was a little girl, who did not have her emotional needs met in childhood, is now in marriage, and she still doesn't have her emotional needs met in marriage because her husband likely suppresses his emotions because in his childhood, emotions weren't talked about and emotions were considered weakness. And then she has a child. Are you guys following? And then she has a child. In specific, she has a son. And now all of these unmet emotional needs that weren't met in childhood, they should have been, that aren't being met in her marriage because her marriage is not healthy. She now puts all of those unmet emotional needs on her son. And now that son becomes the center of her life. He becomes her center of gravity, and she spends her life doing tawaf around him. And now he grows up and he gets married. Now I want you to think about for a moment, do you think she's just gonna let that go? Remember, this was the source of fulfilling decades of unmet emotional needs. Emotional needs that aren't being met in her own marriage, right? Because there isn't even a healthy relationship in the marriage. The husband and wife aren't even husband and wife, they're just father and mother. They're just parents. And the only relationship they really have with each other is that together they do tawaf around the child. So now when he gets married, you now have what you might call the mother-in-law problem. And this is the root cause. And even deeper than that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not at the center. Because if I take any other thing and put it at the center, even if it's my own son, I will suffer and he will suffer and his wife will definitely suffer. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Inshallah, let's have some time for discussion, questions, processing. I gave you a lot to process. You're having those blank faces that either mean you're processing or you're hungry or something. Is it the processing phase?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So, let's say you suspect that the fire is coming from the spiritual side, but you do all your obligations, at least you think you are fulfilling them. What's the first step that you should take to fix that part of your life?
So the question is, if you suspect that the fire is coming from the spiritual quarters of your life, but you're doing your obligation, then how do you start to fix it? Good question. Honestly, what I would say is, usually the cause of this is that there's something else at your core that's competing with Allah. This is deep now. This is not like you're praying to the other thing. It's not like that. So what I want to explain is this. Imagine that you take your car and you notice that the gas tank is empty, and you take it to the gas station and you're like, okay, gas is super expensive because of what's happening in the rest of the world, so orange juice is on sale. So then you take orange juice and you put it in your gas tank instead of gas. What have you just done to the car? You've destroyed the car, right? You don't have to be a mechanic. You've destroyed it. Is it Toyota's fault? Is it Nissan's fault? Is it Mercedes' fault? Whose fault is it? Yours. Because you put orange juice in the gas tank, okay. The creator of the car put a tank there that can only hold one type of thing. And if you put a different type of thing there, it will break the whole car. The creator of the human being put a tank inside, and that is the core of our hearts. That's our tank. And it was created to only hold one type of thing, which is La ilaha illallah. There's no competitor with Allah. And if I put any other thing in that place, I'm putting orange juice in my gas tank. And that's what breaks me. So when I find myself in a spiritual crisis, and I'm doing the obligations, I have to check, do I have orange juice in my gas tank? I have to check, what is my orange juice? Got it? What are some types of orange juice? What are some brands of orange juice? Money, that's a big one. Wealth, what other people think, what other people are gonna say. This is something that we worship more than we think about what Allah is, how Allah sees us. We're more concerned about how other people see us. But what are people gonna say? Well, what are people gonna think? That's more important to us than how Allah sees us. And that you can see in so much of our lives. But that has to do with what do I actually love most? What do I actually worship? It's not about worshiping. No one is praying to money. No one is, like we're not, right? You're not